What if the most terrifying thing in existence isn't death but understanding? Not the kind of understanding that gives you clarity, peace, or resolution, but the kind that strips you of everything familiar, everything safe, and leaves you standing naked in the presence of something so vast, so alien, that your mind fractures just trying to hold it. Have you ever stared into the abyss and felt it blink back? Have you ever considered that maybe it wasn't blinking at all because it doesn't see you? Not because it's blind, but because you are irrelevant. There is no script, no climax, no hero's journey, no divine logic tying the stars together. And yet here you are yearning to understand, to make sense of the unspeakable silence surrounding your life. Why do you seek meaning in a universe that refuses to answer? Why do we construct myths, gods, narratives, names for things that might not want to be known? More disturbingly, what happens when something does look back and it is not what we hoped? For thousands of years we've clung to the light. Rationalism, progress, certainty. We etched gods into the heavens and drew maps on the void. We gave names to storms and turned chaos into data. But the unknown remains, untouched, just beyond the reach of language. It doesn't move closer, it waits. Quiet, impassive, and sometimes it smiles. The horror of the unknown isn't merely that we don't know. It's that maybe we can't. There are things we cannot perceive because we were never meant to, not because we are weak or flawed, but because our cognition, our eyes, our tools, our metaphors were shaped for survival, not truth. Your brain doesn't care about the infinite. It cares about whether something in the dark is going to eat you. And yet, despite this evolutionary blindness, you seek. You stare into black holes and contemplate quantum voids. You dream of aliens, of gods, of secret knowledge behind the veil. You want to pull it back. But if you really do what makes you think I'll still be you when it's over, it's not just monsters or madness lurking in the shadows. It's the possibility that there's nothing there, or worse, something is there, but it's so utterly indifferent to your existence that it breaks you in half. Let's walk toward that edge, not to find answers, but to feel what it means to be a question unfinished, unwelcome, and awake. Because maybe the deepest terror isn't that we are lost, but that we were never meant to be found. There is a word for the fear of the unknown, xenophobia. But in cosmic horror, the xeno is not foreign in the cultural sense. It is foreign in the ontological sense. It is the fear of something utterly outside your conceptual framework. Something not only unfamiliar but untranslatable. Imagine encountering a being whose perception of time makes your entire lifespan a static, meaningless smear. Imagine a truth so large it cannot fit into your language, not because it is complex, but because it is alien to the architecture of thought itself. In Lovecraft's writing, this dread was not draped in blood or screams. It was cloaked in silence, suggestion, and the unbearable weight of not knowing. His monsters were not terrifying because they were violent, but because they were incomprehensible. The real horror wasn't that you'd be devoured by Cthulhu. The horror was that Cthulhu is, and your mind was never designed to make sense of such a being. As Lovecraft wrote, the most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. This is where philosophy meets terror. Think of Immanuel Kant's distinction between the phenomenon, the world as we perceive it, and the noumenon, the thing in itself, forever beyond our grasp. We do not see the world. We see our brain's model of it, shaped by categories like space, time, and causality. The unknown lurks in the cracks between those categories, and the unknowable, that which we cannot even model, is the space outside the frame, a kind of epistemic shadow. Now imagine trying to see the shadow itself. Eugene Thacker calls this the world without us, a realm of existence totally inaccessible to human thought, where things simply are, without need for our observation, our interpretation, our meaning-making. It is a realm where gods might exist, but not for you, not in ways you can understand. And when those forces bleed into our world, the result is not enlightenment. It is unraveling. This is the true terror, not death but disintegration of the self, a kind of philosophical entropy, the slow crumbling of every mental structure you thought protected you from chaos. What happens when language fails, when symbols collapse, When the story you tell yourself about who you are no longer fits the evidence. In psychology, there is something called a schema collapse, when your internal model of reality gets so violently contradicted that the brain can rebuild. This is not stress, it's not trauma. It's a kind of cognitive vertigo where your inner compass spins and you realize you're not lost, you're floating, untethered, and there is no ground. Have you ever felt it? That quiet dread when something doesn't feel real even though you know it is. The glitch in the pattern. The sudden silence where your inner voice should be. You can't rationalize it. You can't fix it. Because you are not facing a problem. You are facing a limit. And some limits are sacred, not in the religious sense but in the existential sense. They're boundary stones at the edge of being. Warning signs not placed by gods or demons, but by the structure of consciousness itself. So the question becomes, what do you do when you reach that edge? When you feel the walls of your mind flex, fracture, and bend towards something that refuses to be known. You lean in. And that's where we go next. Imagine waking up in a life that feels borrowed. You go through the motions, say the right things, smile at the right people. But beneath it all, there's a whisper, a quiet, persistent sensation that none of this belongs to you. That everything is a mask, even your name, especially your name. You start to notice strange moments, a word repeated on a billboard that you just thought seconds before, a flicker in your reflection that didn't quite match your expression, the sudden awareness that you don't remember walking from one room to another. It's subtle at first, but it grows. You try to explain it to someone, anyone, and they call it stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation. Maybe they're right. Maybe they just don't want to look. This is how the horror of the unknowable manifests in human life, not with tentacles or ancient tomes, but through the slow erosion of certainty, through dissociation, through the gnawing sense that the reality you cling to is little more than a fragile story on the verge of collapse. In these moments, the self begins to shimmer like a heat wave, still there, but unstable, melting around the edges. You start asking questions you were never meant to ask. Who am I if I don't trust my own thoughts? What is memory if it can't be verified? What is truth if everyone around me is just pretending to believe it? You are not alone in this. Carl Jung wrote that the greatest danger to the individual is not death, but becoming lost in the unconscious, in the shadow. And what is the shadow but the accumulation of everything you have rejected? Every unanswerable question, every thought you were told not to think, every fear you wrapped in silence and shoved beneath your ribs. The unknown isn't out there. It's inside you and it's growing. Think of the people you've seen crack not in the movies but in real life. The friend who vanished into a cult, the stranger on the subway muttering equations to himself, the relative who spiraled into a world of conspiracy. Not because they were stupid, but because the answers we gave them were never enough. They looked too long into the dark, and the dark looked back with nothing. The human psyche is built for coherence. We tell stories not just to entertain, but to survive. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Holocaust, wrote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. But what happens when even pleasure becomes hollow? When distraction fails? When you stop running and the void catches up? You begin to feel the weight of all you do not know, of all you cannot know, not just about the cosmos, but about yourself. The childhood memories that feel like dreams, the moments where your behavior shocked you, the part of you that wants to be destroyed, just to see what's on the other side. This is not depression, this is not illness, this is awareness, a painful gift, a sacred rupture. Søren Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, that moment when you stand on the edge of the infinite and realize you could leap. So what keeps you here? What invisible tether holds you to the narrative even as the edges burn? Is it love, fear, habit, or is it something deeper, a hope that maybe, just maybe, the unknown isn't only a horror, but an invitation? Let's find out. So you've stood at the edge. You've peered into the fog that wraps itself around thought, meaning, even identity. You've felt the contours of something vast and indifferent pressing in against the fragile shell of your understanding. And in that confrontation with the unknown, with yourself, you didn't shatter. Not completely, you're still here. Maybe trembling, maybe changed, but awake in a way most people will never be. This is not a triumph. This is not a revelation tied in a bow. You haven't discovered a secret that will save the world. There is no secret, no ultimate truth waiting to be uncovered behind the curtain. That was the lie, that there was ever a singular, final answer to anything. And yet, there is something you can take with you. Awareness, not of the content of the unknown, but of its presence, its necessity. Because the unknown isn't just a space of terror, it's also the birthplace of possibility. The same vastness that can unmake you is also what frees you from the tyranny of the known. If everything could be understood, life would be a closed loop, sterile, static. But because the unknown exists, so does growth, so does change, so does choice. What scares you isn't the darkness itself. It's what the darkness takes away: control, identity, logic, narrative. But in that emptiness, you also gain something else, the raw, undistilled potential to become. Erich Fromm once said, "The quest for certainty blocks the search for meaning. Uncertainty is the very condition to impel man to unfold his powers." You can truly create until you've let go of the need to know what you are creating. You can't truly love until you accept that every person is an unknowable world of contradictions. And you can't truly live until you stop trying to make sense of life and start experiencing it, raw and unresolved. The horror of the unknown is real. It's existential, not theatrical. It lingers in the quiet, in the stares, in the moments that don't resolve. But maybe the horror isn't meant to be escaped. Maybe it's meant to be integrated, not solved, but accompanied. You've been trained to run from what you can't explain. But what if you paused instead, sat with the discomfort, let it breathe beside you, not as an enemy, but as a shadow of your own becoming? Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." That chaos, the unknown, the unformed, the frightening silence inside you, it isn't there to consume you. It's there to stretch you, to push you beyond the limits of inherited thought into something truly yours. So when the silence comes, and it will come, don't fill it with noise. Don't rush to fix it. Let it speak in its language of absence. Let it hollow you out, not to break you, but to prepare you, to prepare. Because what waits on the other side of the unknown isn't certainty, it's depth. And depth is where real transformation begins. So the question isn't, what is out there? The question is, what is awakening in you as you dare to look? Not who are you, but who are you becoming now that you've seen the edge and decided to stay? Thank you for watching.